Okay, so welcome back. This PowerPoint we're going to focus on how to set up a works cited page and then how to evaluate resources that will build on your argument rather than detract from it. So there's a couple rules that we need to establish before you set up a works cited page. Rule number one is that you do a citation for each source that you use. This includes Facebook, Twitter, anything that is not your own idea has to have a citation. And that kind of connects to rule number two, that everything has to be cited. And hopefully by now this should sound familiar from the first PowerPoint. Rule number three is when in doubt, go ahead and cite it. It's better to be safe than it is to be sorry. And hopefully this rule should also sound familiar too.
Hello, I just wrote a movie. Do you want?
So a layout of a works cited page, the first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that it's the last page of your paper. If you put it at the beginning, then it just kind of detracts. And it's better to do a works cited page than to do footnotes, because footnotes just provide more information on something, but a works cited actually gives credit to who wrote it or where it's from. And then a works cited should be in the center of your page, so you can see from that example right there that it's in the center and that there's a little space after it. You want to make sure that it's not underlined, because if it's underlined it just kind of detracts from it. It's an MLA thing. And then always alphabetize your sources by last name. If they're not alphabetized, it makes it harder to find them. And then always remember that you want a hanging indent, so you can see how all of them have that part. If you have Windows, you'll just go into it and do the paragraph and then hanging indent. If you have Apple, good luck, because I am not sure how to do it. So to cite a book, you want to use this format. It's easier if you just copy and paste this into a Word document or whatever you prefer, and then you can actually have it for when you're doing your works cited. The one thing you want to make sure is that you pay attention to the punctuation. That kind of trips a lot of people up because they'll forget to do a period or a colon or a comma. And so make sure that you're really paying attention to where it's supposed to go. And then if the book, it's kind of tricky because if the book has more than one author, you'll use the author that comes first in the article and their last name and then their first name. So you can see how it says Gillespie, Paula, and then you'll do the author's second name. And it's the same, it's just a continuing list. If you have more than two authors, you'll just put and Neil Lerner, comma, and then the rest of the authors. Okay, so article citations are similar to the books. However, instead of putting the publisher, you'll actually put the name of the magazines. So it'll look like the example below. And then just one thing to remember is that you make sure that the title of the article is always in quotations, and then the magazine is actually in italics. And then a lot of people will spell out the month instead of just abbreviating it, but MLA does require that you abbreviate it with the first three letters of the month. So electronic sources are actually a combination between book and articles, and they'll look a lot like the example there. The one hard thing with electronic sources is sometimes the information's not all the way available, so you want to make sure that you can find as much as possible. The one thing to note too is with MLA, they actually have taken away the requirement that you post in the link to where you found the information. Some people still do it. It just depends on how easy it is for the person reading your paper to find. If it's an easy website, then I would say don't use it. But if it's something that's a little bit more difficult to find, then it's better to be safe than sorry. So do not use son of a citation machine to do your works cited page. It messes up a lot of citations, and then you'll get caught. And a lot of professors will dock kids if they catch people doing it, or they'll actually just give you an F on the assignment. This actually happened to one of my friends, and she had the chance to hurry and redo her citations, but it definitely got her in a lot of trouble. So long story short, it may be faster, but it's not always correct. So just remember the story of the tortoise and the hare. So to find and evaluate sources, the best sources for you to use for your pre's are peer-reviewed sources, and what that means is that more than one expert in that area has looked and edited that article. So what will happen is you have 3 or 4 people that will edit and review this article before it's submitted to a magazine. And the library is a great place to start to find these. You can see on the side it will say peer reviewed or not. And then if you can't find anything on the library, you can always look through the different databases. The one that they most recommend is the MLA interbase, and that's just, you can find that on the articles and databases link on the library, or you can actually interlibrary loan articles. The one thing though is you want to make sure to give yourself some extra time because it takes a few days for those to come through. It takes about, articles are faster, it usually takes me about 3 to 4 days to get my articles back from Interlibrary Loan, and they'll email you when it comes in, so that's nice. And then another thing you can do is research your author a little bit. If you have a source that you're not quite sure if it's credible or not, you can type them into Google, and if they pop up, then you can find a bibliography or a biography on them. And if it sounds like that they've written quite a lot, or if they're a professor in this specific area, then I would probably say that you could trust them. But if they've only written for a blog spot or they haven't really published a lot, I would see if there's a different source that you could use. So here are the good and the meh sources. The library is probably the best source for you guys to use. Google Scholar is pretty good. I use Google Scholar quite often, but I look for the articles that have been cited the most. You'll see it. It's kind of in a light gray font. And then I will also look for the author's credibility on that one too. Organizations or the .org that you'll see on websites, those can be pretty good. The one thing to do is kind of find out who the organization is funded by, and if it's a sponsored organization or not. You can usually find that in the About. A lot of websites will have a link that talks about the organization, or you can find it at the bottom of the web page. And then EDU sites can also be really good sources to use. However, I would check the author. A lot of them are actually written by graduate students, and there's quite a few though that are written by graduate students and then edited by a supervising professor. And those I would recommend using because they've been double checked. Articles are another good source, and then the one thing that you want to make sure with articles is that it belongs in a trusted magazine. So if it's about the environment and economics and it's in Cosmopolitan, I probably wouldn't go with that source. So meh sources are sources that you can use, but you really want to take some time and really think about if it's valuable for your paper or not. Twitter, Facebook, or other social media like Blogspots or Instagram can be used. They're best for finding information on like current events from celebrities, or if you're looking for personal things. However, they're not always accurate. Rarely are they accurate. So I probably wouldn't recommend using those. You can talk to Susan about it if you have questions, but I would try and steer far from those. Wikipedia is kind of the same way. It's a great place for a starting point, but what I do, I don't know if this is legal or not, but I'll scroll down to the bottom and look at the citations and then kind of use the citations from the bottom as a springboard of where I want to go from there. And it's great for definitions or to kind of help narrow down topics. That's a great way to go too. There's a database online that's called JSTOR, and that one's really outdated. So if you're looking for information to compare to, like 2 decades ago, then I would recommend that. But I don't recommend JSTOR just as a regular source. Google's another great starting point. Don't type your pre-topic into Google and use the first source that pops up, because chances are that it's just not going to be a valuable source because they're funded by how they're listed is how much they pay for that website. So, and then that ties into the websites, that last source. Try not to use websites like yourmama.com. They're just not that valuable, and I don't know that you would find anything reliable on those types of websites.